This is kind of baked into the DNA of who the Dodgers are. Everyone who works here knows I rattle on about our history and our legacy of being innovative and reaching out in our community. I talk about the three things we focus on, which is our product on the field, our fan experience in the stadium and out, and the third and most important is our community outreach, the thousands of programs we do, big and small, throughout our community.
I like that you touched up on that. There's a lot that we can do, because one of the things that you do have a role with Flutter Entertainment, which has a women and gender ambassador, as a women and gender ambassador. So can you talk a little bit about the initiatives that FanDuel as a company is trying to initiate to bring more women into the industry, and then how that ties into your Flutter Entertainment role?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things that I get to, think about how I can leverage my platform for good as a CEO. Advocating for talented women in my organization, but also in the industry, it's a real privilege. And there's a few things that we've done. One is there's a little bit of tone from the top and putting our money where our mouth is. We've set a very public target that by 2026 we want 40% of senior positions to be occupied by women.
I'm going to talk about the stuff behind the scenes, and maybe you can give us insight. Because the biggest thing in the world is really getting prepared to go into the call room or the meeting room.
Yes, that was an experience on its own.
I mean, it is so tense. It is so tense. You'll walk into the stadium maybe a couple of hours before the event, and you start your warm-up. So you're behind the scenes and you're warming up. And all the athletes are, they're doing their own warm-up, they're doing their own thing. But as the time approached for you to be called into the call room with all the other athletes, that tension starts happening.
Yeah. I think being a part of Team USA definitely just gave me a huge boost of confidence. I think Team USA is one of the most difficult teams to make in the world, especially in track and field. And to have that USA on my chest and to be there really just affirmed me that I was one of the best and I could do this for sure.
Well, now we have come to the coup de grace, which we are going to have a chat with Cookie Johnson. And let me just share a few things about Cookie before we go into the Q&A. Cookie is a successful entrepreneur, author, philanthropist, and I'll also say influencer. She uses her platform to raise awareness against HIV/AIDS, advocate for the LGBTQIA+ community, and works to uplift women spiritually and physically.
I don't purposely do it, but what I do is, you just live your life. I think you live your life. And if you live, a good life, I think people will notice. But I support, when I hear about events like this or different things like that people are doing, to support women, I'm always trying to figure out how I can be a part of it. And support it in any way that I can.
I've loved my role as the general counsel for the Chargers. In so many ways, I had a very unique way of getting to the general counsel role of an NFL team. I started my practice in litigation. That's all I've done, litigation. So trial work, going to court, people fighting over things, and we represent them. Very different than transaction, M&A, sports. And I happen to represent an individual in a case completely unrelated to sports, unrelated to the Chargers, but it was a very contested litigation case relating to a contract for real estate and employment.
Now, before I introduce our panelists, I know we're a small group, but I want to know, do we have any law students here today? Perfect, welcome. And do we have any practicing attorneys? Amazing, welcome.
Okay, so if I had to bet, I would bet, I would probably say South American and EMEA, just because like they're just generally like underrepresented markets, and with like the streaming platforms that need local content, I would say like probably like I would say those two regions. One thing I would say is when I started practicing, most people were long time ago. Most people were doing domestic deals. And once in a while, you came across somebody that said, oh, I do international law. And everybody was like, oh, international law, what are you doing? Now, I started with like a purely domestic practice, like representing US private equity firms, buying mostly like 90% US assets. And like when we had like an international component, we had like a BVI or Cayman company to just like do it in a tax efficient manner.
Well, I don't work with LeBron that much. He's the chairman of my board, and of course he's focused on winning the Olympics, trying to win a championship. So he's really focused on basketball. But I think he just trusts the team to run the company while he's in season. But Maverick is my day-to-day boss.
I'm the poser on this panel because I'm not a technologist per se like the Carries, but I have worked in technology and now in the intersection of sports and technology. So I've spent my career in largely technology companies. But I loved what Amy said earlier on the keynote, which is, not necessarily coming in saying, oh, I have to be in sports. Sports are a huge passion of mine, a big part of my life growing up, a big part of my life as a mom right now of 2 athletes. But I didn't come in with the intention of landing in sports per se. I've worked in media companies, I've worked in digital technology companies, mobile technology companies, and I think the one theme is I've always sort of followed a passion.
I spent 4 years in sports entertainment, before that 20-something, across other industries, healthcare, technology, telecommunications, pharmacy, and then found my way into sports and entertainment after the opportunity to be able to blend my love of softball and sports. Growing up played just down the street here at Cal State Fullerton, growing up in the military.
We have a lot of really interesting perspectives. I also spent 14 years in entertainment, so I have that part of the equation to kind of round out the portfolio. But I think what I'm going to start with is really having each one of you guys talk about your start in the industry.
My background's also not in sports. I started off as a serial entrepreneur. I started 5 companies over my career, all in technology, but the first 4 were in media and technology in broadcasting. And with my 4th company, that was all VC backed, and our 5th venture capitalist to come onto our board was the Carlyle Group, and they're sort of known for cleaning house and positioning companies for sale. And so the founding team was all sort of wiped out as part of that.
The W has just been a space that I love, and I'm not even a real OG. It's 7 years for me. Someone in the room, Nat White, I'll shout out, it's been 15 years in the W, 16 years, right? And so a lot of us are like, welcome to the W. So we're really excited about that. The Spark specifically, 28 years, OG franchise, 3 championships, legacy. So whereas starting the Aces was something that you're building from scratch, it's completely different. We're teaching people about women's basketball. This is a role that to me has so much, like, it's sacred. This is a franchise that means something to the city. So to get the 2 and the 4, I mean, is just incredible.
I think for me, just a little backstory. I have been here since November 1st. 7 weeks later, we signed a player named Shohei Ohtani, and I have fortune favors the brave or lucky. And it's been an incredible ride. Prior to this, I was at Riot Games leading their global partnerships across the Americas, and prior to that at Fox Sports.
I would say if I leave you with one thing, studies show women have less confidence than men. And I would tell you, you can do it. You can do it. And it's something that I've learned the hard way in my career. You can do it. And women are less really lack the confidence to take the next step and think they can do it, but you can do it. Listen, it's not always pretty. I've gone to work with 2 shoes. I didn't wear mascara for a year. I can be a train wreck. And listen,
Sorry, you said you went to work with 2 shoes.
Yeah, 2 shoes. One was actually Hyde. Witnesses, they're right
2
here.
different shoes.
Yeah, 2 different shoes.
Aha, got
2
it.
different shoes.
What project do you want to bring to life?
What's next? I just finished shooting this audacious, hilarious, female-driven buddy comedy with SZA and Keke Palmer. Issa Rae's producing. We shot in the hot summer in the LA streets. It's authentic, it's fun, and it's empowering.
When I was with the Cubs, I was fortunate to have such an amazing, passionate fan base, and it was all about just continuing to stoke that. Chicago's a young, vibrant city, bring new fans in, make sure that generationally people were passing their Cubs fandom down. And then you get to the league and you realize, I'm not trying to make someone a fan of MLB. I'm still trying to make people fans of clubs and players. And so it was a real shift in thinking about how to do that and how to go from something like baseball, which is highly regionalized, and try to create more national and global storylines out of our players and out of our clubs.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Bryson, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Special Events for Levy. So a little food and beverage representation up here on the stage. And just real quick, I know you're asking, well, what is special events? Well, it's vague by design. But right now, we're primarily focused on all of our motorsports and festivals business in Levy.
I think my first job was working at a company called American Zoetrope, which Francis Ford Coppola founded. And he was my first boss. And I think a lot of times when you come into an organization with a lot of tradition and lore like that, I'm sure with teams as well, it can be really daunting, but I just loved so much what he stood for and what I thought the company stood for that I was willing to be the receptionist to start. And that was my job.
Definitely. So I'm curious with all of you, what inspired your leadership styles? There's so many resources available to us nowadays, classes, leadership training, so on and so forth. But for me personally, a lot of my leadership skills came from observing leaders I've had, both good and bad. And so now as a leader within my company, I implement some of the things that, some of the things that maybe I wish somebody would have done for me or had me in mind or advocated for me. So I'm curious for all three of you, what inspired your style?
It's just the hype around ever since ChatGPT came out. It can predict everything, right? It's going to predict how long, you're going to live. Which I wouldn't be surprised if there were models that people are training out there to do that. But it can't do everything, and so I agree with you guys.